पृथिवी शान्तिरन्तरिक्षकं शान्तिर्द्यौः शान्तिर्दिशः शान्तिरवान्तर दिशा शान्तिरग्निः शान्तिर्वायुः शान्तिरादित्यः शान्तिश्चन्द्रमा शान्तिर्नक्षत्राणि शान्तिरापः शान्तिरोषधयः शान्तिर्वनस्पतयः शान्तिर्गौः शान्तिरजा शान्तिरश्वः शान्तिः पुरुषः शान्तिर्ब्रह्म शान्तिर्ब्राह्मणः शान्तिः शान्तिरेव शान्तिः शान्तिर्मे astu shantihi. May there be peace on earth and in the sky. May there be peace in the water and in all directions. May there be peace in the plants, in the trees, and in animals. May there be peace in the hearts of all beings. May there be peace in everyone and in everything. Sarvetra sukhinas santu. Sarve santu niramayaha. Sarve bhadrani pashyantu. Ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhavet. Sarvastaratu durgani. Sarvo bhadrani pashyatu. Sarvas sadbuddhimapnotu. Sarvas sarvatra nandatu. May all be happy and healthy. May all see what is good, and may no one experience misery. May all overcome their obstacles and acquire good tendencies. May people everywhere find joy and fulfillment. Let us now spend some time touching the center of peace and joy in our hearts. A good way to begin the practice is to withdraw the scattered energies of the mind and bring them to rest on one point. That point can be our own breathing. Let us therefore practice breathing with awareness. As we breathe in, let us visualize that our body and mind are being filled with love, strength, and compassion. And as we breathe out, let us release all the stress, anxiety, and exhaustion in the body and mind. Let us practice this way for a while. Let us now turn our attention to the region of our heart. Although God is present everywhere and in everyone, the divine presence can be felt most clearly in our own hearts. We can meditate in any way we have been taught. To remain focused, we can take the help of a short mental prayer or a mantra or a divine name. Let us now spend some time dwelling on the presence of God in our hearts. Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Aviravirmayedhi Rudrayatte Dakshinam Mukham Te Namam Pahi Nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine Consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. So we start today on verse number 11. And we saw last time that this Upanishad deals with most of the topics that we have discussed earlier on other occasions. So this is a good opportunity for us to quickly review and reflect on what we have already done. That's why I'm not spending too much time on every verse, because this is something that has come often in our discussions. And so even though it might seem as if I'm going faster than I normally do, afterwards when we have discussed it towards the end, feel free to ask if you need any specific clarification about any of the verses. So verse number 11. Atmanam aranim kritva pranavam chottaraaranim jnana nirmathanabhyasat pasham dahati panditaha. Making the Atman the lower arani and making Om the upper arani, a wise person burns the shackles with the help of knowledge produced by the repeated friction. So, in the Vedic times, there was no image worship. The worship was all done in fire. Fire was seen as the great purifier. And nowadays, of course, we have many gadgets of how to light the fire. The traditional way was they had these two pieces of sticks, A little bit like this. And each of those was called arani. And the way they produce fire was through friction. So these two pieces of wood, they'll kind of put, and then with friction, the heat, when the spark comes, and then that's how they would light the fire. Even today, when people want to do things in a very technically orthodox way, in India, I have seen people do that. Here, when we need fire, we just use a shortcut. But that was the way it was done in Vedic times. So this verse uses that analogy. So just like two pieces of wood are necessary for that fire to be lighted. So here, it's the Atman on one side and an Om, which is a symbol for the infinite reality, Brahman. And so the idea is the Atman and Brahman, we repeat with the friction between the two, the fire of knowledge will come. And that knowledge will be to really recognize that Atman and Brahman are not two different entities, although they are called by two different names. And the simplest way to understand the meaning of Atman and Brahman is to just look at our own personality. So we have this sense of I am someone, I'm a being. But when we look within, we see that parts of my being have changed. Clearly, when we were born, we weighed only a few pounds. Now we weigh much more. Our mind has grown, evolved. The kind of ideas and emotions and feelings we had when we were children, those are changing. And in fact, that's constantly changing. So physically, we are changing. Mentally, emotionally, we are always changing. And yet, we feel I am still the same person. There is something in me that has remained unchanged. So that unchanging part of me is called the Atman. So just as there is this unchanging part within the changing me, if we look at this world outside, we know also, well, so many things are changing. But behind the changing part in the universe, there is the unchanging behind that. And so all the schools of thought in Vedanta, their primary concern is how this unchanging behind the individual is connected behind the unchanging behind the universe. In theistic language, the unchanging behind the universe is called God. In philosophically, in Vedanta, that unchanging is called Brahman. Brahman is not the name of a person. Brahman simply means the infinite one. So that is how this. So the Atman is the unchanging behind the person. Brahman, unchanging behind the universe. And the different schools of thought will say that the dualistic approach in Vedanta would be the unchanging here and the unchanging there are always separate. The qualified non-dualistic, kind of a midway path, would be the unchanging here and the unchanging there are different but not so different. In other words, the example that is often given is of a tree. So a tree, well, is one entity, but within the tree, inside there are differences. There are branches, there are flowers, there are leaves, there are fruits, but the tree as a unit is one. So just as the leaves and branches are parts of the tree, but together they constitute one, similarly, the Atman here, the selves are all parts of that infinite reality, and together everything constitutes as one. And then there is the non-dualistic schools, which say that the unchanging here and the unchanging behind the universe are just identical. They are not different at all. So this is what this verse is pointing out to. So this gives the example of the friction between two pieces of wood, the friction between Atman and Brahman, and then realizing a wise person burns the shackles so that fire will burn the bondages with the help of knowledge produced by the repeated friction. And the knowledge is the relationship between the Atman and Brahman. 12. Sa eva maya parimohitatma shariramasthaaya karoti sarvam striyanna panadi vichitra bhogaihi sa eva jagrat paritriptimeti. So now these next two verses will discuss what this self now experiences within the three states: waking, dream, and deep sleep. So deluded by Maya, it is the self as Jiva. Jiva means the self which is identified with his body and mind, does everything after getting identified with the body. In the waking state, it is the Jiva who attains satisfaction through varied experiences such as sex, food, and drink. So all the experiences that this self identified with the body and mind gets, the satisfaction comes through the contact of the body and mind with the rest of the world. So that is the experience in the waking state. Verse 13 will discuss the experiences in the dream and deep sleep. Swapne sa jivaha sukha dukkha bhokta swamayaya kalpita jiva loke sushupti kale sakale viline tamo vibhutaha sukha rupameti. In the dream state, the jiva experiences pleasure and pain in the self-created world through one's own maya. During the time of deep sleep, when everything is dissolved into its cause, the jiva is overpowered by tamas and attains the state of bliss. Self-created world. Who creates our dreams? We create our dreams. That's why we are the only ones who know it. Next day I can relate my dream to somebody else. But it's a little bit like like when you upload a video on YouTube. You can either make it public or it's only for private viewing. So all the videos that are uploaded in our dream are only for private viewing. Nobody else can see our dream. We can relate them to others, but nobody else can see it. That's why it says the self-created world through one's own maya. In the state of deep sleep, everything gets dissolved. Overpowered by tamas. Tamas, we know, is the state of extreme inertia, the state of darkness, and attain the state of bliss. So sometimes when it is said ignorance is bliss, the truth of that you can see in deep sleep. In deep sleep, we are totally ignorance. Ignorance, of course, there is already ignorance of our true nature, but we are also ignorant of the world. So both ignorance of the world and ignorance of our true nature, and it's a state of great bliss. So you can understand ignorance is bliss even from a Vedantic standpoint. That bliss which we experience in the state of deep sleep is a bliss that is not coming from the world, because we are not even aware of the world, not aware of any objects in the world. That bliss is coming from our one's own self. So that's the ananda, the blissful, our own blissful nature is shining forth. Now, does that blissful nature stop shining when we are awake or when we are dreaming? Actually, no. If it's my nature, it can never stop shining. If it's, for instance, if it's the nature of the sun to shine, the sun can never stop shining, even at night. So, as children we might think, oh, at night the sun becomes dark and in the morning it wakes. But we know, when you grow up, we are wiser. We know it's the nature of the sun to shine. The sun never stops shining. It's just that we are not able to see the sun. So the darkness is not because the sun is not shining. The darkness is because we are not able to see that shine of the sun. So there is an obstacle in the path, which is why the earth is round and all of that. So similarly, if the blissfulness, that ananda, is my nature, it can never disappear. It can never vanish. So it's not as if only in deep sleep we are experiencing that bliss. Actually, that bliss is present even now, even in our dreams. The problem is there is an obstacle. So just like when the earth turns, so the body of the earth itself becomes an obstacle for me to see the sun. Similarly, in the state of waking and dreams, the awareness of the objective world itself becomes an obstacle. In the state of deep sleep, there is no objective world. That hurdle is removed, and then my blissful nature, which is always shining, I'm able to experience that bliss. Now, that bliss is still there. It's kind of covered by this external world. If I can somehow find a way to neutralize this external world, I can still feel that bliss. Now, in order to neutralize, the external world doesn't have to disappear. It has to simply lose its reality, its apparent reality, which we have bestowed it upon it. Just like when we are dreaming, the dreams are very real. We make it real. We create our dreams. Then when we wake up, we are able to laugh it off and say, oh, that was only a dream. So the reality that we gave to these so-called dreams, we are able to withdraw, and the dreams can stop bothering us. We get bothered or are affected by things happening in the waking state because we are not able to dismiss them the way we are able to dismiss our dreams. So if I can find a way to deprive this world of reality, the way I'm able to deprive the dreams of my reality, I can continue to experience that bliss even in the waking state. Which is why enlightened being, we see in the case of Ramakrishna, is always smiling, just filled with joy, even in the waking state, because the waking world for him was not as objectively real as it is to the rest of us who are still struggling to find the truth. So that is what is being stressed here. And that is what is meant by saying the jiva is overpowered by tamas and attains that state of bliss. Verse 14. Punascha janmantara karma yogat sa eva jivaha swapiti prabuddhaha puratraye kridati yascha jivaha tatastu jatam sakalam vichitram adharam ananda makhanda bodham yasmin layam yati puratrayancha. Through the karma done in earlier births, the same jiva again returns to the sleep state or the waking state. All the diversity has sprung from the being who sports in the three cities, the states of waking, dream, and deep sleep. This being is the substratum, the bliss, the indivisible consciousness, in whom the three cities dissolve themselves. What is it that makes us dream? What is it that makes us wake up from sleep? We know, however much we would like to, suppose we are extremely exhausted and we say, oh, tomorrow I'm having a holiday, I'm not going to wake up early, I'm not going to put an alarm, I'm just going to sleep. And let's say you have no business to attend to next day and you have just decided I'm just going to sleep. You're going to wake up sometime. I mean, you can continue lying in your bed. That you can do. But sleep, we don't have control over our sleep. We don't have control of when we go into sleep. We don't have any control of when we come out of sleep. And so the question is, what is it that, I was about to say puts me to sleep, but that will mean anything. What is it that makes me enter sleep and start dreaming? And what is it that wakes me up from my sleep? And what this verse points out is it's our karma. If karma means experiencing joy and sorrow, we recognize that in the course of a day, there are things that make us happy, there are things that make us miserable. Also in dreams. Sometimes the dreams are fun, we enjoy it. We experience happiness in our dreams. Sometimes the dreams are terrible and we suffer in our dreams. So there is joy and sorrow in the waking state and there is joy and sorrow in the dream state. And that joy and sorrow that we experienced in either of these two states comes because of karma. So when it is time for me, so when we take birth, there is already some karma that has to be experienced in this life. That karma is called prarabdha karma, the karma that has begun to yield fruits, which is going to yield fruits in this life. Now, some of those fruits, again, fruits means just the experience of joy and sorrow. Some of those fruits are going to be experienced when we are awake. Some of those fruits are going to be experienced when we are dreaming. And we don't know how these experiences are budgeted. There's no, because some days are worse than some others. So again, I don't know how this mechanism works, but when it's time for me to experience some joy and sorrow in the waking state, my karma wakes me up and says, okay, enough of your bliss in deep sleep. Now come and experience a little bit of joy and sorrow in the waking state, and I wake up. When it's time for me to experience some joy or sorrow in my dream state, karma puts me to sleep and says, go to sleep now, and some joy and sorrow are waiting for you in your dream. So that's what it's essentially saying, that what makes sleep possible or a dream possible are my karma, because in both states we experience joy and sorrow. Look at the last sentence. This being is the substratum, the bliss, the indivisible consciousness. Now this is important. In order for me, so we say, well, we have these three states. How do I know that I have these three states of waking, dream, and deep sleep? In order for me to know, I have to be conscious of them. I know I'm awake because I'm conscious of the waking world. I'm able to see my dreams because I'm conscious of the dream world. If I were not conscious, I wouldn't be able to see the dream world. Am I conscious in deep sleep? Of course I am. Because if I were not conscious in my deep sleep, I wouldn't be able to experience the bliss in the deep sleep. I wouldn't be able to experience the ignorance of the deep sleep. Which is why when I sleep, really have a good deep sleep, next morning I wake up and say, oh, I slept so well, I just feel so refreshed. Didn't know anything at all. So really, we were experiencing that kind of nothingness, and we are also remembering the experience of that bliss we had in deep sleep. So, what is common to all the three states is that we were conscious of it. I was conscious of the waking, I was conscious of my dream, I was conscious during my deep sleep experience. And that is what is meant here. The substratum, this being is the substratum, the bliss, the indivisible consciousness in whom the three cities dissolve themselves. So the real me, the waking world is different from the dream world. The dream world is different from the deep sleep experience. While these three experiences seem seemingly different, what is common to all these three is consciousness. That consciousness is undivided. Just like the light. The light that, let's say I keep a light burning, whether it's day, night, or anything. The light is the same. There may be day outside or night outside, the light is the same. Similarly, the light of consciousness is the same, irrespective of whether it is shining on waking, dream, or deep sleep. And you and I, every one of us, is that light of consciousness. Once we know we are that light, all problems will end. Right now, we have forgotten that we are the light, and we are identifying with the objects which are illumined by that light. My body and mind is an object illumined by that consciousness, and I'm thinking I am that. That's all the problem there is really. That I'm the subject and I am somehow identifying myself with the object. and I need to kind of come back to myself. That's the crux of the whole Vedantic practice. Verse 15. Etasmat jayate prano manas sarvendriyani cha kham vayur jyotirapah prithivi vishvasya dharini. This verse comes in the Mundaka Upanishad as well. Several of the portions that come in the subsequent part of this Upanishad, you will find portions of it from the Gita and the Shvetashvatara Upanishad. So these minor Upanishads borrow texts, if you like, from these bigger Upanishads. So from this being spring up prana, mind, all sense organs, space, air, light, water, and earth that supports all. That is the inanimate, animate world. In other words, everything that I see springs up from this being, which is pure consciousness. In order for a thing to exist, I must be conscious of it. I won't go into details, but we have to change a little bit our way of thinking. Sometimes these ideas become difficult to grasp because we are set into a worldview in which we assume that things exist independently of me. Because that's the way our daily life goes. That's the way we have been programmed to think. And that's a problem. That's a problem. Well, it's a problem to understand the Vedantic approach to things. According to Vedanta, things are not independent of my existence. And that's why a lot of this quantum physics and how the observer changes the nature of what is observed, that comes very close to the Vedantic way things are seen. That it's not just that things are there and I'm seeing them. That's classical physics. But what the approach here is just the act of seeing it is changing what is seen. I'm not an expert in physics, but one simple way to understand that is, well, here this is an object. This is an object. Now when I see it, I'm not simply seeing the object. At the very moment I see it, I'm also seeing so many of my ideas associated with whatever I'm seeing. For instance, when I look at this and I might say, oh, this is a metallic object. This is circular. This makes sound. So all of these are ideas. Some of them may be factually correct, or they could be misconceptions also, but they are still ideas. So when I'm seeing something, I'm not just seeing it. I'm seeing it along with a lot of other things. And therefore, what I'm seeing is in some ways my own creation, because it is connected with my projection of the ideas I have about those objects. And so what this verse points out is really the entire animate and inanimate world is really sprung up from this consciousness. If I were not conscious of them, I wouldn't even know that these things exist. That's the idea. Verse 16. Yat param brahma sarvatma vishvasya yatanam mahat sukshmat sukshmataram nityam tattvameva tvameva tat. That which is Brahman, the Supreme, the Self of all, the great support of the universe, subtler than the subtle and eternal, that is you. You indeed are that. This last section of this Upanishad really is kind of a long meditation. of trying to shake us out of our complacency, reminding us again and again that we are not just these mortal beings of flesh and blood beings who just born at some point and about to die sometime else. That the reality of who I am is much deeper. So these verses, and I'll just read them slowly and just reflect deeply over them. In the end, afterwards we'll see. If you have any specific questions, we will deal with it. That which is Brahman, the Supreme, the Self of all, the great support of the universe, subtler than the subtle and eternal, that is you. You indeed are that. Jagrat Swapna Sushuptyadi Prapancham Yat Prakashate Tad Brahmaham iti Jnatva Sarvabandhaih Pramuchyate. I am Brahman, who manifests the phenomena such as the states of waking, dream, and deep sleep. Experiencing thus, a person becomes free from all bondage. 18. Trishudhamasu yad bhogyam bhokta bhogascha yad bhavet tebhyo vilakshana sakshi chinmatroham sada shivaha. I am different from whatever constitutes in the three cities the objects of experience, the experiencer, or the experience. I am the witness, the pure consciousness, and the eternally auspicious. 19. Mayeva sakalam jatam, mai sarvam pratishtitam, mai sarvam layam yati, tad brahma dvayamasmyaham. In me alone is everything born, and in me does everything rest, and in me is everything dissolved. I am that Brahman, the one without a second. As you can see, when I said it, things don't have independent objective existence, independent of me. That is the idea. In me alone is everything born, and in me alone does everything rest, and in me is everything dissolved. So everything, the me, the real me, the pure consciousness is the only abiding reality. 20. Anoraniyan ahameva tadvat mahanaham vishwamaham vichitram puratanoham purushohamisho hiranmayoham shivarupamasmi. I am smaller than the smallest. In the same way, I am the greatest of all. I am the manifold universe. I am the ancient one, the inner being, the ruler. I am the effulgent one, and goodness is my nature. 21. Apanipadoham achintya shaktihi pashyamya chakshuhu srashrunomya karnaha aham vijanami vivikta rupo nachasti vetta mama chit sadaham. I am without hands and legs and have unthinkable power. I see without eyes and I hear without ears. I know all and am different from all. None can know me. I am always the pure consciousness. I can see without eyes means I give the eyes the ability to see. There is a Upanishad called the Kena Upanishad, which says that what is it that makes the eyes see? What is it that makes the ears hear? So the ability of the senses to perceive objects, that ability comes from me. That is what is meant here. None can know me in the sense of none can know me as an object. Most of our knowledge right now is a knowledge of objects. I see this, I see that. I cannot see myself in the same way because I am the subject. It's a little bit like none of us has seen their own eyes. It's with the help of eyes that I see everything, but I cannot see my own eyes. We might say, well, what about standing before a mirror? Well, mirror, I'm seeing a reflection of my eyes, which is a pretty good, it gives me an idea of how my eyes look. But looking at a reflection is still not looking at me. So that's more or less the idea. So my eyes help me see everything, but I cannot see the eyes themselves because I cannot objectify my eyes. Here's one funny story I remembered, so let me share with you, although it's not it's such a serious subject, but anyway. So here was this one person, two friends, well, not friends, well, two people, let's say. They met, and one person says to another, let me see. Oh, yes. He says, can you bite your own eye? And then, I mean, of course, we cannot, how can you bite your own eye? And so then this person says, no, I don't think I can. Then, but this friend says, the first one says, I can do it. You bet? How? Then the first one says, it's impossible. I give you $100 if you can bite your own eye. And then this person essentially is wearing dentures, so he just takes out his dentures and kind of bites it. It's a very childish joke. So he gets $100. Then after that, he says, I can bite the other eye also. Now that's impossible. How can you bite the other eye? And then he said that's impossible. And what he does is, the other eye is a false eye. He takes it out and then knocks it with this way. Anyway, how did I come there? Oh, yes. So if it's a false eye, I can objectify it. But if it's a real eye, cannot be objectified. I can see its reflection, but I cannot see the eye itself. Similarly, I can know myself, but not as an object. I can know myself as the subject. That is what is meant by saying, none can know me, I am always the pure consciousness. 22. Vedairanekai vedyo vedanta krit veda videva chaham na punya pape mama nasti nasho na janma dehendriya buddhirasti. I am taught in the various Vedas. I am the revealer of the Vedanta, and I also the knower of the Vedas. For me there is neither merit nor demerit. I suffer no destruction. I have no birth and no identity with the body and the senses. 23 and 24. Na bhumirapo na cha vanhirasti na cha nilo mesti na chambarancha evam viditva paramatma rupam guhashayam nishkalam advitiyam samasta sakshim sarasatvihinam prayati shuddham paramatma rupam. For me there is neither earth, nor water, nor fire, nor air, nor space. These are considered the 5 primary elements from which the material universe has come. Thus realizing the Supreme Self, who dwells in the cave of the heart, who is without parts and without a second, the witness of all, beyond being and non-being, a person attains the pure Supreme Self. As you can see, throughout this Upanishad, there are not any radically new ideas, but the ideas that we find scattered in different places in larger books, all have been kind of brought together to help us focus on the essence of the Vedantic teaching. So I welcome your thoughts, questions, ideas. If there's anything here that needs further explanation or didn't make too much sense, feel free to ask. Yeah.
Namaskar. You were talking about the principle of karma and how karma causes the waking state and the sleep, the deep sleep state and the swapna state as well. And you mentioned that essentially what we experience, the sukha and the dukkha, the joys and the sorrows, is what was already set out before we took birth. And so we experience them at different points in our lives, according to this principle. How about our actions? I mean, have they also been predetermined by the same prarabdha karma?
No. Actions are not determined. That's where our freedom lies. Our experience is determined because experience is only the result of past actions. But what I'm going to do now or what I'm going to do tomorrow, that is not predetermined. So that's where my responsibility comes. So I can't simply say, oh, I did this stupid mistake, but that was determined by my karma. No. Karma determines only the experience, not the action.
This might be silly, Swamiji, but I think growing up with Gita since the childhood, where you start thinking of Krishna as being different than you, I think it started that duality in me. So this talk that you just gave really is very
Krishna
empowering.
is different from all of us. Krishna is different. But
we are
no, Krishna is different from us. But the reality in Krishna and the reality in you, that is same. But Krishna is different. It's a little bit like when you have, let's say, an image of Ganesha and an image of a mouse, which is Ganesha's vahana, a vehicle. Usually, a mouse and a Ganesha, they are always there. So a Ganesha is not a mouse. They are different. A mouse is different, a Ganesha is different. But maybe the material out of which the both are made. So suppose both are made of gold. So as gold, they are same. But that doesn't mean Ganesha is a mouse or mouse is a Ganesha. So Krishna is different. But the reality inside Krishna. So we have to say, what is the reality in Krishna? Because Krishna had a body, just like you and I have a body. Krishna had a mind. He had parents. Now, all these details about Krishna's life are different from the details of my life. But is Krishna the body in which Krishna lived? Or is Krishna the Atman? Because Krishna himself never referred to himself as, well, I'm just this body. Because if that's how he thought, then he's no different from us. So whenever Krishna in the Gita refers to me or I, he's not referring to his body or mind. He's referring to the Atman. So when I, and any of us, use that word I, and if we refer to the Atman in me and the Atman in Krishna, they are same. But I and Krishna are different.
Thank you, Swamiji. This is what I got from you today.
Okay.
Thank you.
Welcome. Yeah.
Swamiji, when you explain the difference between Atman and Brahman, what is the relationship with consciousness and Atman and Brahman?
Atman is consciousness, Brahman is consciousness. In fact, they are considered sometimes traditionally 4 Mahavakyas, the great teachings. Essentially, all statements which point to the non-duality of the Atman and Brahman is called Mahavakya. But traditionally, they have taken one each from each of the 4 Vedas. And one of those Mahavakya, the great teaching, is Prajnanam Brahma. Prajnanam means consciousness. Brahman is consciousness. Now, you'll find the word in this text often translated as pure consciousness. So when say, well, what is it that makes consciousness impure? So pure consciousness really means objectless consciousness. The example is light, for instance. none of us can see light. Light cannot be seen. What we see are objects illumined by light. But light itself we cannot see. So the difference between the objects illumined by light and light itself is the difference between objects which are revealed by awareness or consciousness and consciousness itself. So consciousness itself without any object, that is pure consciousness. So we are pure consciousness. That is consciousness which doesn't depend on an object to prove its existence. Just like light can be there, light can exist even if there are no objects there for light to illumine. I mean, think about it this way, as a kind of just imagination. Suppose there were no, our own solar system didn't exist. Well, the sun existed, but none of the planets and nothing. Now, would it be like, well, the sun, we say, what's the point of me being there? There is nothing to light it. So the sun will still continue to shine, even if there are no planets or anything, because that's just who the sun is. So similarly, my nature is consciousness. Right now, because of my ignorance, the world seems to be there, and my consciousness makes me conscious of the world. But even if the world were not there, I as consciousness will continue to exist, just like the sun will continue to shine, even if there is nothing for it to illumine. Okay. Yeah, Ashish.
Swamiji, we refer to Atman and Brahman as the common words used are consciousness, bliss, existence. Is bliss a function of the mind?
Bliss is experience through the mind. Mind is it's not a function of the mind, it's more the instrumentality of the mind helps us experience it.
So consciousness itself is not bliss, because consciousness is consciousness.
Yeah, consciousness.
When we say consciousness, it is consciousness, existence, bliss. It's not that Brahman is consciousness, like we experience it as bliss, or the mind experiences.
Right. That is why no one can say what consciousness is, because putting it into language, putting it into words is to limit it, and so we are trying to limit what is essentially infinite, and so all descriptions are a distortion in some ways. And that's why I am that I am. The moment I say God, even from a Vedantic standpoint, we might say, well, God is omnipresent, almighty, all loving, and we might think, that's a great description. But according to Vedanta, even if I say God is love, that is still not a perfect description. If God is beyond the reach of these limited senses, then I can never describe God. All descriptions will be limited. And that's why Shankaracharya in his commentary, even when we refer to the word God as Satchit Ananda, what Shankaracharya says in his commentary is, when we say God exists, God is Sat, God is existence, what we really mean is God is not non-existence. When we say God is consciousness, what I'm really saying is God is not unconsciousness, or God is not material. When I say God, when I say it's infinite, that means Ananta. Actually, the Upanishad, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma, that Brahman is infinite. And the commentators point out, when I say Brahman is infinite, what I'm really saying is Brahman is not finite. In other words, we can say what Brahman is not. And so if I'm able to eliminate everything, this is not Brahman, this is not Brahman, this is not Brahman, then what remains is Brahman. But I can never say what that remains is, because saying it would be distorting it. Yes.
Swamiji, as you were saying that the different schools of Vedanta differ from each other in the sense of how Atman and Brahman are related to each other. Now, given the fact that both Atman and Brahman are actually consciousness, and so how do we even justify the position of the dualistic schools or the qualified non-dualistic schools? Because if consciousness has no form, no limitation, then it has to be a relation of identity. It can't be, I'm a part of this consciousness, or I'm different from it. So, I'm curious to know what is the argument that the other schools give that look, we are different.
Well, you have been reading a lot of non-dualistic books, so which is why it's fine. Because that way of thinking feels like the most obvious thing. But I think if you study some of these writings of Madhva or Ramanuja, they do use the word consciousness, but maybe not exactly in the way it is used in non-dualistic schools. So sometimes they will, for instance, they say that God is like a super consciousness, and this is like not so super conscious. So they will find ways to distinguish between the two. Having said that, I think it's important to recognize that when we speak about dualistic schools in Vedanta, this is not to be confused with dualistic schools outside the Vedanta. I mean, there is dualism as such, but the Vedantic dualism is a little bit different, in a sense that even the dualistic schools in Vedanta don't accept that this world is real. So that's one difference. If you find in some of the other traditions which are dualistic, the world is real. Everything is real. So that is not there. So the dualistic schools in Vedanta, they say that the self and God are different. But they never have any doubt about the status of the world, in which all the schools of thought in Vedanta agree, is this world is not worth wasting time over. By wasting time over is meant, don't sweat too much wondering whether is it real or unreal, or when did it come, how did it come. What they are essentially saying is, no matter how much time you spend worrying about the status of the world, that is not going to solve your basic problem of existence. This is an unsolvable problem. So they say, don't worry about it. There is a much easier way exists out of this mess, and that is to know what your relationship is with the Infinite One. So, and you don't need to worry too much about the world. So they don't definitively say world is this or world is that. They simply say that's not going to give you the answers that you are seeking. Yeah.
But just to follow up, they don't fully negate the body and the mind. They negate the world, that the world is not important.
Well, what is your body? And body and mind is a part of the world.
But isn't that a non-dualistic way of looking at it?
No. Even a dualistic person doesn't say the body is an integral part of who I am. As far as the self is concerned, they are all same. Where they differ is only how the relationship between this self and that supreme self, the relationship between Jiva and Paramatma, that is the only difference. Rest everything, they're pretty similar in everything else. And that's why this dualistic schools in Vedanta you have to understand the distinction between this dualism and the general dualism. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anish?
Swamiji, I have a question about one of the shlokas, I think 18, where they says that, I'm the witness, pure consciousness. I'm not the object of experience, the experiencer, or the experience.
Mm-hmm.
So it, I'm not that. So in terms of practice, when we take the perspective of the witness, of being the Atman and being the witness of what happens around us, then so we're aware of what's happening in the world around us. So I just have a little confusion about when you take the perspective of being the witness, how's that different from being the enjoyer, not being the experiencer? So it almost seems like they're the same. Like I'm experiencing the world because I'm aware of the world. So what's the distinction between?
No, actually, it's a good question. I'm happy you asked that. So, okay, let's go to that dream. That's really helpful in this. Now, when I go to sleep and when I start dreaming, there are actually two experiencers there. Because I create the dream world. Everything in my dream world is a creation of my mind, including myself, because I see myself in that dream, right? So, among the multitude of objects and people that are created in my dream, there is this one person in that dream who I decide that's me. So the dream world is seen by that person in the dream with whom I'm identifying, right? So that person is experiencing the dream world. But who is experiencing the dream world along with this person? I'm also seeing myself there. So in some sense, the real witness is not the me who is moving about in the dream. The real witness is the one who is asleep. The one who is asleep and is produced everything. That person is different from the dream world, is different from that little man or little person who I see as me, and is different from the experience itself. That's how. So when we say I'm the witness of the world, it's not. Okay, let me put it this way. When we say I have to be a witness, we don't include ourselves in it. So when I'm a witness, I'm just witnessing everything outside of me. But is my mind inside me or is my mind outside me? Is my body inside me or is my body outside me? In other words, where am I? If the boundary of my existence is this body, then most of the body is inside me and the mind is inside me. But then that's not the real me. The real me is the Atman. And therefore, if the real me is the Atman, there is nothing inside the Atman. So my mind is outside me, my body is outside me, just as the world is. So my body and mind are as much a part of the world as this table and this chair. So being a witness would involve not just seeing things outside or what I see as outside now, but seeing even this. So experiencing the apparent experiencer of the world, then I'm a true witness. Does that make sense? Okay. Anything else? Okay, so we have now successfully. I was wondering, since last week we had the guest speaker. I was wondering whether we would be able to conclude this today, but we have done. Mission accomplished. So let me conclude. Om Jananim Saradam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagatgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva pranamami muhurmuhu. As we need to remember with the study of any of these great texts, we have not really finished the Upanishad because no Upanishad can be finished. But this is an opportunity for us to reflect on some of these ideas. And in Ramakrishna's teacher, Totapuri, Vedanta teacher, he had a kamandalu, a brass vessel, and he would clean it every day. So spend a lot of time cleaning it every day. And then once Ramakrishna asked him, why do you need to clean it every day? And then he said that every day it can acquire some dirt. And then he gave that as an analogy then. The same thing with regard to our mind. It's not enough to read any of these texts, not just the Upanishads. Even when we read the Gospel of Ramakrishna or Holy Mother's life and so on. Yes, we read it once, and what is needed is a continual reflection. Not on the whole book, but at least some of the ideas. That's the way of keeping our mind clean and shining. Because otherwise, we just read it once and say, okay, that's done, that's finished, remains in some corner of my shelf. And then I get busy with my daily chores. And it's possible then that all these, right now when we're thinking about it, being a witness, this is all my own creation. It's good, at least intellectually satisfying. But then, now if I just go out and then don't think about this again for the next 2, 3 days or months, I'm again going to think, well, I'm going to go back to my default way of wrong thinking. And therefore there is this great teaching. It says, Asuptehe amrutehe kalam nayet Vedanta chintaya. Kalam nayet, kalam is time. Spend your time Vedanta chintaya, thinking about these truths of Vedanta. How long should you do it? Asuptehe, until you fall asleep. Amrutehe, until you die. So until I fall asleep, until death comes, I need to always keep on revolving these ideas in my mind. It's then that enlightenment comes. So this is not some kind of a magic that I just do a little bit of japa in the morning for a few minutes and a little bit of japa in the evening. Oh, enlightenment. Well, it can come, of course. Through God's grace, anything is possible. But recognize that these great mystics and saints and prophets of the world, how much they struggled. The great Vedic sages, how much effort they put into that enlightenment. And so we have to recognize that no effort is too much. And so we have to do our best, of course. What is our best may change with time, because our ability, our capacity changes with time. But at any given time, we should try to do our best, because it's only through that persevering mind, with infinite patience, with great sincerity, with great faith, it's then that enlightenment will come. So this is the message that comes to us from all these different Upanishads. So when we, now of course we'll be closing next week for the summer recess. So when we meet in September, that will be on September 12th, I think, our first study group meeting will be. So we will start a new Upanishad, the Katha Upanishad. Now that is one of the most favorite, probably the most favorite Upanishad of Swami Vivekananda. We had studied it in this several years ago, many years ago, I imagine maybe 15 years ago. So I think that will be a good book to revisit and study for some. And after that, Kathopanishad study is done. We will go and study Viveka Chudamani, that great text written by Shankaracharya, the crest jewel of discernment. So that's the rough plan going forward. So if you already have a copy of the Kathopanishad with you, bring it with you when we meet in September. If you don't have a copy, then try to get a copy in the meantime. And if you get a chance, just give it a read. So there are about 5 or 6 weeks now before we meet on Wednesday. Just give it a read. And then you'll be familiar with the lay of the land, so to speak, of what's there in the book. And then we'll have more time to discuss it when we meet in September. So that's our plan. On Sunday, as most of you know, we will be celebrating Guru Purnima. We will meet at 11. There'll be a short worship, there'll be music, there'll be prayer, there'll be meditation, there'll be a short reflection, and then there'll be potluck lunch. That's the plan for Sunday. On Saturday, we'll have a meditation as usual. And so beginning next week, so Sunday will be the last service. And so from Monday onwards, our summer recess will begin, and we'll reopen on September 9th with Krishna Festival. So that's the idea. Okay, let's conclude with the prayer now on page 3. May the Divine Being, who is the Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Aura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, the Great Spirit of the Native Americans, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May we be granted strength, freedom, and clear understanding. May we learn to see God in our own hearts and in everyone around us. May God bless us all and fill our hearts with gratitude, grace, and love. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.